I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be talking about season 2 of Palm Royale with actor and executive producer Laura Dern and executive producer Jayme Lemons. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about with you both, hi, so
Nice to
good
Hi,
to see
Mara.
you. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about was just how the equilibrium of season 2 has completely changed the narrative, because season 1 was so much focused around Kristen Wiig's character Maxine trying to feel like she fit in somewhere and trying to feel like she belonged. And now, in essence, she does belong in this society, in this community, and she has these friendships and relationships. And so it allows her character to be more grounded, but the situations to be even more heightened. And I was interested in how that really changed some of the dynamic of this season and making it.
I don't know if you want to start.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, Maxine's always, at least for us, certainly in these two seasons, Maxine is always on the move, and she's always looking and seeking and has her hands in the works somehow. So she's in a way, after the first season, but the ground has still shifted underneath her. So she's coming into season 2 with um, a life that is is just completely upended and has had such a shattering at the end of season 1 that in some ways is not dissimilar from starting over, as just, walking into Palm Beach for the first time. Everything, the rug has been pulled out from under her completely. So there's a starting over to her, of finding a new way to be a person in the world, in her world. So, uh, she's in a different, she's in the same setting, but in a very different, has a very different perspective on it now. So, I think, Kristen walks that line of, holding Maxine's experiences from the first season, but having new eyes on Maxine and her world now in season 2.
I also think it's so interesting that there's so much we can get away with when it's an enormous good time. And in a way, the bigger it gets, the more embedded the story can become of larger themes that we really care about. But one thing I think that's interesting in the narrative of the characters, not just the female characters, but Ricky's character Robert as example, but particularly for women, is they're in reaction to the men. They're in reaction to the longing for the love of the man, or the betrayal of the man, or in this case, the sins of the father, or the man's money, or the power that the men have. And in season 2, we're able to watch these various storylines have to crack through the reactive into starting to understand what they want or what has true value for them. And that's really interesting because even though we're looking at 1969, 1970 and saying, has anything changed? We also are all discovering what we really are longing for and want to fight for. And yeah, so I'm just having fun learning about the themes that are that are ever present in the story.
I mean, it's such a great point, and that point that you touched upon, which is with the tone and the approach of the show, and by having the comedy, you can have all these elements where things are constantly in discussion, and sometimes it's just a singular line. Maxine has a line about, well, I know that I can't just go home and be angry about everything because then everybody's going to accuse me of being crazy. And that's such a big statement about the way that society views and perceives women. And how have you both found that, yes, you can have these bigger storylines, but also you can just have these little throwaway lines that kind of say so much about the characters and society at the same time?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Abe and the writers do such a good job at that, and they're throughout the season. And they do convey so much, and not, it's it they say so much by saying so little, but saying it so profoundly. And to your point, that line does say so much, and she's so right because she's not allowed to have feelings. Douglas could. He could say and feel however he wanted, but no one's going to put him in a sanitarium.
Mhm.
So it just, they do such a good job at reflecting what the struggle of the female condition, if you will, in a way that is, I think, reflective maybe of things now and certainly things then, but they do it in a way that lets us laugh and lets us have a good time. But, you know, if you think about lines like that, it maybe hits home, or it leaves you with something as you're walking away.
Yeah, and even with you, Laura, in kind of your portrayal of Linda, and she fully recognizes and is aware that she's a radical feminist, which is exactly the poster child for what the government want to push back on. And so your character's existence in itself is also this great commentary. And so what's that experience been, particularly with the storylines in these first few episodes of the season of, yes, you're playing this character, but also what is that conversation that's happening at the same time?
Well, what I love, and despite the inspiration of the book that we found in our development, it was Abe, in knowing all the things we wanted to talk about through this story and this world, that came up with the idea of Linda, who was not a character in the book, and that it would give me the opportunity to come in as sort of the Greek chorus surrounding this bubble by being the one who left it, because she knew there needed to be a revolution on the outside because no one was seeing what was happening around them. And so, that's delicious fodder for commentary and irreverence and a reality check. And to play that kind of character is amazing. But also, you know, she's balanced by the fact that she also was raised entitled, so she thinks she's a revolutionary, but just doesn't want it to be too terribly uncomfortable. It's like, so there's a gray to all of these characters that are really fun to play with.
I mean, even with the idea that she doesn't want to be too uncomfortable, with her the radical side of herself, she's held in a padded cell in a sanitarium, and yet it's the most beautiful decorated fabric. And I wanted to ask about just where the detailing of that came from.
That's John Carlos,
John
the production designer, through historical research.
Yep.
Wow.
Which is just kind of amazing. This, like, yes, we'll lock them up, but we'll make it cute. And that in fact has existed. So this idea of it'll feel like a vacation, but we won't have to see them, is just an interesting commentary all its own. And I also just love being a radical revolutionary that's like, I will do anything for my friend. I will do anything for the world. I don't care if I go down. I'm speaking for the masses. And then the line is, I mean, the electric chair is just so not me. I mean, just, it's courage. Courage is a profound thing to stand by.
Yeah. I also remember both of you as season one talking about just finding the equilibrium of all of these different characters in the ensemble. And, especially now that there's these much more intricate storylines at play with every single supporting character, it's kind of even more of a challenge to approach. And so, Jayme, I wanted to ask you about that because I remember it was something that wasn't just during the script process, that even in post-production and editing, that was something that was still conscious for everybody.
It was then, in a different way. I think now it's different in that Abe and the actors and the writers very much know who they are and how they wanted to further them. And we set a tone and set sort of the parameters of what the show is and what the world is, and laid a really firm foundation in season one. And now that table is set and they really get to go play. And we just could not be more excited about this season and all that has gone into it. And yes, the stories are more intricate and they overlap in the most insane, absurd, and fantastic ways. And it makes it all the more delicious, the more entertaining. And Laura can speak to what it's like to participate in that as an actor who she and her fellow castmates all had thoughts about where they wanted their characters to go or places they wanted to explore, and our writers leaned into all of it and somehow delivered on all of it while being the architects of this incredible storyline that goes to incredibly diverse and wild places along the way to culminate in what I think truly is one of the great final moments, final few minutes in a show that I can think of.
I love that. Because even with Norma, with Carol Burnett's character, at the beginning of season one, she was completely comatose and had no dialogue. And now in season two, she gets to kind of fully live in and kind of revel in the more villainous aspects of who she naturally is. And, how do you feel like the foundation of everything in the first season really has just added these extra layers and these extra places that you can really go and explore all these characters in such new ways, almost.
And that the actors have shown us, taught us all that they can explore with those characters. And I think it just made our writers, and of course, Abe at the helm, want to give each story that. I thought it was untenable, to be honest. I thought, yes, Carol Burnett's our hero, and we have to obviously write to serve Maxine, who's at the epicenter of it all. But I mean, there is no storyline where there wasn't such deep consideration. And I think, just when you think you know someone is part of this journey. And they surprise you with empathy despite themselves.
It's a great
You're
way
like
to put
kicking
it.
and screaming. I ended up caring. There is a little bit of that too
Yeah.
for a few of the characters, which is just so amazing.
Mhm.
But they're all just iconic people, actors. We're doing a musical number, and suddenly our friend, who's this beautiful actor we've been working with for a year and a half, starts singing and dancing. We're like, oh, right, you're also Ricky Martin. And then our guest star is just an amazing actress, is also Patty Lupone. So you just, what they also give it, what they bring to it is just amazing. But Carol specifically uh, has an extraordinary arc that will be shockingly unexpected, and she brings villainous, delicious, iconically hilarious, deep, true beauty
Yeah.
to us this season, and it is a gift to watch.
We could not be more excited.
Yeah.
There's also this other added aspect where a lot of season one was these characters trying to have these real projections of self, and there's still elements of that at play, but a lot of it has also been stripped away. They've seen behind the curtain, they've discovered each other's biggest secrets. Obviously there's more secrets to still uncover, but how did that kind of change the aspect of looking at all these characters when some of the projection has been stripped away from them like that?
I think it's just a truer exploration. I think that it just gets to it's just a deeper place to explore. I think that they as their characters know each other in a new way, and I think that's what makes the season so fresh, because they know what they know about each other, and they are distrusting of the things they're distrusting of, and that adds layers of not being able to move forward in certain ways and then having to move forward in spite of those things anyway, and all the complications that arise from situations like that. So it's a fresh way to look at each other in those moments.
Yeah, I was going to say, particularly looking at Leslie Bibb, Josh Lucas, and Kaya Gerber's performances and their storylines. You know, just when you think you know someone, back to that, the show is not offering this. Actually, complicated surface people are deep and poignant. It's like, no, people are a mess. They're vulnerable and awful and greedy and virtuous, and they may be all things. And those three actors really explore those characters, and the writing gives them the opportunity to explore a real arc where you think they're going to be one thing and they completely shift in and show us really shocking things. I mean, I wasn't there for some of the shoot of their storylines, and then watching in the edit, take after take, all the various choices all the actors gave. I mean, they're so extraordinary. But those three as an example of like, wait, they're what kind of person are they actually? It's just so fun. It's so fun
So
everywhere
funny.
you turn.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic. And, also for both of you having worked together as producers for so many years and working on such a wide array of types of projects, from If Anything Happens, I Love You, which was that incredible animated short film, to, the Obama administration photographer documentary. Jayme, I remember you saying once that one of your best days ever as a producer was the first time you were ever optioning something and getting that phone call to say like, yes, we've landed this and like you've got the rights to it. And I was just curious about, those moments and those wins that you really feel so strongly still to this point in both of your careers together and working on this show.
I mean, the wins are fantastic, and they're the things that elate you. But I think that there are other things that elate you just as much, which are when you go to work and you see Carol Burnett and Vicki Lawrence work together, and it's on a show you're producing. I mean, I don't know how you top seeing Laura Dern act with her dad. Um, there are, I think wins come in lots of different ways. I think, watching our crew rally together after the Los Angeles wildfires is as horrific as it all was. Seeing them just hold each other with so much love, and I think there are wins come in all kinds of forms, and being around such exceptional people all the time in my career is just it's a gift that I really don't take for granted.
But also I so deeply appreciate your journalism in our last talk, and really highlighting women in business and leadership positions. And I would also add to that part of our growth has been not celebrating the wins, but learning how to say no and set
Yeah.
boundaries. Because I think for women, when they come into a position of power, it's not something we're necessarily used to. And so, like being given opportunities where you say, absolutely not, we don't want that, we won't do that, we deserve a voice in the room, we're not interested, or a project we cared so deeply about, and suddenly the entire world has changed. And you say, that's not a value anymore. And being honest enough to let certain things go, like all these things, I think have been a big growth piece
They have.
as producers, or as women in business in general. That's been certainly for me something that as an actor I didn't have to be necessarily good at. I could hide behind, the people in charge and just be immersed in this character. But when you're having to organize it so that things get to happen. It's
Yeah.
a very different position. It's
I
been exciting to learn
couldn't
about.
agree more.
No, I love that point, and it reverberates so strongly as well, just from my own experience. So thank you for sharing all of this, and congratulations on another great season of the show. It was so lovely to talk to you both
you.
again.
Laura, it's always so good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much.